Introducing one of the most underrated cuts in the smoking game, the oyster blade. While everyone's stressing over brisket and spending all day at their smoker, this hidden gem gives you just as good results in half the time. I'm talking like 6 hours instead of 12, and the best part, it's almost impossible to stuff up. But here's what everyone's asking: does it taste as good as brisket? Well, stick around to find out. So we're outside in my amazing outdoor kitchen up here on the Sunshine Coast today, and I'm going to show you how to smoke this delicious oyster blade. Now the thing is with an oyster blade, as opposed to a brisket, is that they're a much better shape when they come out of the packet. When you get a brisket, it usually has this big piece of hump off the side of it, and it's kind of two different muscles that are joined together. These are kind of one nice shape straight out of the packet. There's a little bit of trimming that we need to do, but apart from that, they're pretty much good to go on the smoker. It sometimes can be called flat iron, but that's usually when it's cut down into steaks. The oyster blade's the whole piece of meat. And what makes an oyster blade great for smoking is this big bit of connective tissue that runs right through the center of it. And I'll show you more on that later when we carve this thing once we've smoked it. That piece of connective tissue is what makes this piece of meat incredible for smoking, because it breaks down, gets all gelatinous, and keeps the rest of the meat nice and moist. I'm not hating on brisket, I love brisket, but especially if you don't want to smoke like a 5 kilo brisket, these things are perfect. The other benefit, these are far more cost effective. Because of the popularity, briskets have become really expensive, whereas an oyster blade is going to be far cheaper. Let's get this thing trimmed up and seasoned, and I'm going to show you some of the secrets that I learned at my trip over to Perth with the guys from Big Don's. So to trim these bad boys is really simple. The top part you don't usually need to touch unless there's a really excessive amount of fat on, which I've never had that problem before. The only part we really need to touch is the bottom. So it usually has a really aggressive, not usually, it will have a very aggressive piece of silver skin that we need to clean up. And then we're just taking off any kind of extra bits like that to make sure it's a nice shape. Some people will trim it really hard down here. I kind of usually just leave it on. I'll trim it and make sure it's a nice shape, but other than that, I'll leave it on. Sharp boning knife, poke it under the silver skin, point your knife up, and away it comes. Not much you can do with the silver skin. You can give it to the dog, that's about it. You could put it in stock actually, or sauce. So first step, just take all that silver skin off. And I'm just gonna flatten out this piece that's sticking up like a mohawk. So this is an ebony Angus oyster, and you can see the delicious marbling in it, which is also gonna help keep this nice and moist. All right, pretty happy with that underside. Trim up this little scraggly bit here. And we wanna make sure, like when you're trimming a brisket, you wanna try and have it as aerodynamic as possible. So I'm gonna, at the moment, this is kind of a bit of a right angle. We just kind of want it to be nice and round. And what that does is just allow the smoke to roll around it. That's it. That's as simple as trimming one of these is. And if you've ever trimmed a brisket, you know how much trim you have to take off from a brisket. And you either have to, mince it for burgers or whatever, but that's all you need. So seasoning, we're doing it Texas style. So we're just gonna use salt and pepper, and we use equal quantities in volume. So this is kosher, well, it's not kosher salt, this is called cooking salt in Australia, or it's kosher salt in the US. So even quantities in volume, not in weight. That's probably twice the amount that I'm actually gonna need, but I am doing some other smoking, so I'm just gonna make twice as much. So I'm just gonna fill this up with ground black pepper. You can buy the pre-ground stuff, and I understand if you have like a normal pepper grinder, they take ages to grind it fresh. These ones are really fast, so it's fine, but you want it pretty coarse. And that goes, just mix that around. Done. So we're gonna use yellow mustard as our binder. This isn't here really for flavor or anything. It's pretty much just to make sure that our seasoning sticks to it. So one clean hand, one dirty hand, get your mustard on there, spread it out. I like to try and do the bottom part first, and I'll try and get the sides done too. So season from a height means you get nice even coverage, and it's a big piece of meat, so don't stress too much. You're probably going to struggle to over season it. Then get the sides. Then we're going to flip this, put it on a rack that's over a tray, and repeat on the top. So while we're putting this on a rack with a tray, well, the Big Don's guys was telling me that this is how they do their briskets. So they'll season their brisket. They cook on a Friday, but they'll season their briskets on a Wednesday, I think, and they'll just dry brine them in the fridge for 2 days. And they've found that they get a better bark when they do that, and a more even season from the salt kind of penetrating the actual meat. So on that goes, I'm gonna wash my hands and I'm gonna shove that in the fridge for 24 hours at least. But don't worry, I've got one ready to go. All right, so here's one that we prepared yesterday, and you can see how the bark is kind of already setting up. Well, not really the bark, but the seasoning's nice and stuck to it, which is what we want. You can also see in the bottom of the tray that there's a bit of moisture come off, and that's because we were effectively dry brining it. So the salt dissolves, and then it gets absorbed into the meat, and then some of that will get excreted. So sometimes if you dry brine a steak, you'll see it kind of come up on the, you'll see it like pull up on the top. Because it's nice and round, it's just come off the side. But it's time to get this in the smoker. So when we're placing this in the smoker, we want the fat part. Oh, there's an aeroplane doing acrobatics. We want to make sure that the thick part is closest to the firebox. In that goes. I'm going to close the lid. So I'm not going to open that lid for at least 2 hours now. I just want to I want that bark to set, and it's going to take a couple of hours, even 3 hours. You could honestly do that as well. But as far as temperature, we want this sitting between 250 Fahrenheit and 275 Fahrenheit. In normal numbers, that's 121 Celsius to like 150 Celsius. We'll come back and have a look at that in 2 hours. In the meantime, we can start thinking about our sides. In the past, I have said sometimes I get frustrated, or I don't love the sides that you get with barbecue food. I think it's always really heavy. One guy's done them well, I think. That's KG Barbecue Kareem out of Austin, Texas. He does incredible sides. So I wanted to give you 3 ideas on sides that I think are nice and light, but still full of flavor, that aren't super heavy to kind of cut through all that lovely smoked meat. So this is a dish, a version of a dish that is pretty common. It's not my dish, it's an old dish, of green beans. These have been blanched, or topped and then blanched in boiling water for 2 minutes, cooled right off. We're gonna blacken them. So we're gonna put them in oil, we're gonna get them really hot, and then I'm just gonna dress them with some really nice XO sauce and some almonds. So first of all, just need to make sure our beans are like super dry, because we want them to get covered in oil nicely. We're gonna drizzle them in oil. This is olive oil. Probably not traditional in China to use olive oil, but hey. Toss them around so that they're nice and evenly coated, and give them a little season of salt. Not too much, because XO sauce can be pretty salty. You got a couple of options here. You can do this in a really hot pan. You can do them on a barbecue, or I like to do them like this. So you want a really hot surface. You can do this in a pan, and you're just gonna put these beans directly on the surface, and we're on the surface. Why can't I talk? Surface. And we're trying to get some good char on them. All right, so this is what we're looking for. Nice color, nice char on the outside. So we've got a couple of tablespoons of XO sauce in this pan that we're just heating up. Just gonna get our beans in there. You don't really need to cook this. We're just kind of making sure it's not cold. Give it a toss. Into a plate. Make sure you get all that delicious XO off the bottom. Swat the fly away. Just gonna garnish with some toasted almond slithers. And there we go. Green beans, XO sauce, and toasted almonds. A delicious twist on the standard green beans that you find in most barbecue restaurants. Yum. It's been in for 2 hours at this point. This is the first time I've had a look at this. There's the old saying, if you're looking, you're not cooking, and it's really important that, especially when you're first starting, you get nervous about what's happening in there. Just leave it, it'll be all right, I promise you. Whee! Mate, it's looking good. I'm happy with that. Let's check the temperature, the thickest part. So we're only at like 39, oh actually 42-ish degrees, which is good. We're not gonna pull this and wrap this until it reaches like 70 degrees, like 170 Fahrenheit. Let me just figure out that maths, because these systems are weird. 76, 75 degrees Celsius, 170 Fahrenheit. We'll pull this and wrap it and put it back in. But I'm gonna leave this go for at least another hour and have another look. So if you're new to smoking and you're thinking, I really want to look at this, trust me, don't, it's gonna be fine. The most important thing to do is to be keeping your eye on the temperature gauge and managing your fire to make sure that you are sitting that sweet spot between 250 and 275 Fahrenheit. If you're in that range, you'll be fine. So the way I like to set my smokers up, which like a lot of people do, and this is kind of the Aaron Franklin method, I keep my top chimney open, fully open, and that way you get a lot of airflow, and I control my temperature by how much wood I'm putting on the fire and how far my door is open. We're gonna let that chill out in there for another hour, and then we'll come back and wrap it. Potato salad. Now, my gripe with mayonnaise potato salad is it's too heavy. So I like to do this like, I guess it's like a French style potato salad. These little baby potatoes, we'll just simply boil them and cool them down, let them get to kind of room temp. I don't want these cold when I serve them, I want them room temp. I think there's a big difference in that. They're cold, it's too much of a dramatic temperature change when you're eating hot meat. So room temperature cooked potatoes. 2 spring onions here. I'm just gonna finely slice these all the way through. And those go. So I got some fresh dill here, washed. We're just trying to pick off the florets. So these like this nice tender stems at the end, straight into the bowl. I like a lot of dill. Some people don't love it so much. So either be nice and ask them first or just put it out and see what happens. More for you if they don't eat it. And then the dressing, take a jar and some seeded mustard. We're gonna use all of that, probably 2 tablespoons. Red wine vinegar, maybe 1 tablespoon. Tablespoon of olive oil, good quality olive oil. And the juice of a lemon. So we want this quite sharp. I think it kind of works really well with the kind of the fatty meat. Lid on, give it a mix. Over that goes. Fresh pepper. Nice bowl to serve it in. Toss it around. There you go, a French style potato salad, which is lovely and fresh and will help you cut through all that delicious fatty meat. And finally, we're gonna do a really light, fresh watermelon salad. Ugh. Ugh. We're just gonna kind of assemble this on the plate, which is even easier. It's a good one to do when you're camping because you don't have to make too many dishes. We want some nice big pieces of watermelon. So roughly into 2.5 centimeter cubes. That is a sweet watermelon, yummy. Then we've got a shepherd avocado. So in Australia, there's like 2 months of the year. We usually have hass avocados. 2 months of the year we get shepherd avocados and everyone loses their mind because they're like, oh, they're not as good as hass. But they're actually perfect for salads like this. They're not quite as creamy, a little bit more waxy. So once you got your avocado in quarters, we're just gonna slice it into 5 pieces. So you want kind of decent pieces. You don't want them too small. If they're too small, they can kind of disappear sometimes. And I got 1 little French shallot here that I just want to slice really thin. You can use a mandolin, you can use a sharp knife if you want, and then break them up. So you have these big slices, break them up so you just have these nice little individual rings. And all we need is some mint, which we'll pick off fresh, sumac, salt, pepper, and then we're going to zest the lime before we juice it. So we're just going to start assembling. Put our watermelon down first, then get some of our avocado on. We've got our rings of shallot, lime zest. Pick off some mint leaves and then give them a tear. You don't want them too big. And then we're just going to season it with some sumac. So sumac is a Middle Eastern spice, really citrusy. Little pinch of salt, some pepper. I'm just going to make this a bit finer than I've been using it for the barbecue. Drizzle of olive oil, good quality extra virgin olive oil. And finally, the lime zest, lime juice I should say. Oh no! The juice of half a lime. There you go. How simple was that to pull together? Watermelon, avocado, and mint salad with sumac and French shallots. Fresh, creamy, and delicious. All right, this has been in here for just over 4 hours now. We're gonna test it. We're looking for an internal temperature of about 75 degrees Celsius, which is 170 Fahrenheit roughly. Then we'll show you how to wrap it and get it back into finished cooking. Oh yeah, look at that. Bark set really nicely, which is what we're after, and we're starting to render fat. Let's find this temperature. So there you go, bang on, 75 degrees Celsius. So I've got some butcher's paper here and some tallow. So get this lovely thing out, lovely thing. Ooh, swat the flies away. So we've got tallow here. This is some Wagyu tallow actually, because we're fancy like that around here. Get a bunch of that on there. That's just gonna make sure it stays nice and moist in the second part of the cook with it all covered in paper. So we're gonna bring it up and over. So roll it once, and then just like a present, roll the sides in. You do want to make sure it's completely covered because it'll kind of bring some of that steam in. Well, not bring the steam in, but it will help steam it cooked all the way through. Okay. Then we want this to kind of sit on the bottom side, so the fat cap's on the board now. I'm going to cook this again with the fat cap still facing up. So when we know that's going to come over, we want a bit extra. Fold that end over. Wrap it around. There you go. Make sure it's nicely tucked in. Now we're going to get it back in the smoker. So we're going to continue smoking that at like 275 Fahrenheit, 150 Celsius, until it's nice and soft in the middle. You can go for like an internal temperature of 96, 97 degrees Celsius, but honestly, it's all about feel at this point. It's about how this probe enters that meat. It should feel like you're pushing the probe into soft butter. We'll come back and check this in about another hour, and it's probably gonna take an hour and a half more. All right, we're about just over 6 hours in total now. but I reckon we're done. Let's pull it out. We'll probe it over here, see how we're looking. So it's actually more important the feel, but we'll get a temperature check anyway. Still climbing, still climbing, still climbing. Yeah, we're at 98.5. So we're definitely there as far as temperature. We'll open it up and we'll see how it feels. Oh, I'll tell you how it feels. Hot. Oh yeah, all that fat's rendered out. Now the guys at Big Don's, they rest their briskets overnight, which you could totally do it with this too. You could shove this in your oven on like 55 degrees, 60 degrees and just let it rest overnight. Or you can do like we're gonna do, which is just rest it for like an hour. But what we're gonna do to get there is we're gonna cut it open. I'm just gonna let it steam off a bit and then we'll wrap it back up and rest it. You can see all that tallow in there. So, oh yeah, that's really hard to describe that feeling, but it's literally like pushing a probe into butter. There's a little bit of resistance there, but it's smooth. That looks pretty good. We're just gonna let that sit there for 10 minutes. I'm actually gonna flip it open. I've made a boo-boo and opened it the wrong way around, making a mess. We'll let that sit there for 10 minutes to steam off. We'll give it another fresh wrap, and then we'll rest it for an hour, and then we're ready to serve. So we've just let this steam off for 10 minutes, that's all. And you can see, like, obviously before there was a lot of steam coming off it. I'm sure you can see that. Now there's not. I'm gonna put that there for a second. We're gonna save some of this, which is like tallow and deliciousness. But we don't need it all though. So we're gonna get a fresh piece of paper, because if we didn't do that step where we took it out and let it steam off, you kind of have too much moisture putting it up and you start losing some of your bark. But it is important to re-wrap it again, which will kind of keep the moisture that's in here inside I just about called it a brisket. It's inside the oyster blade. We're trying to keep all that moisture in there. We'll pour a little bit of this tallow over the top, not too much though. Over that goes, same as before. Fold it in like a Christmas present. Just let that hang out. So, couple of things you can do. Put it in an esky, leave it for 2 or 3 hours, no problem. Put it in your oven, like I said before, 55, 60 degrees overnight, no problem. Or you can just leave it sitting there for an hour, cover it with a tea towel, because we're in Queensland, there's flies everywhere, we don't want flies on it. We're gonna leave it for 1 hour and then we'll give it a carve. All right, before we cut into this beauty and have a look at the inside, do me a favor, like this video if you've enjoyed it, and if you're not subscribed, then subscribe, because we've got heaps of amazing content coming up. But let's see what this thing turned out like. I'm excited. Dunk, dunk, dunk. I also would normally wear gloves when I'm carving this. I don't wear gloves often. Carving barbecue is one time I do, because it is quite greasy and it's also still pretty hot. But I don't have any. And hot tip, don't throw this greasy paper out. Save it for when you're next lighting the barbecue, because it goes up like bloody wildfire. I don't know when I'm next using the barbecue, so I'm just gonna burn it anyway. So I'm gonna cut right through the center to show you this lovely gelatinous part in the middle. Pretty happy with that. And this is the part we're talking about, this piece of gelatinous connective tissue here. That's what's gonna keep this all lovely and juicy. Pretty happy with that smoke ring on the outside here. That's kind of taken on smoke really nicely. Hasn't taken heaps of it up the top here, but that's because there was that big fat cap on it. But all these other sides got a nice smoke ring. And you can see all that gelatinous goodness there. All right, we'll carve the rest of this. I'm just gonna slice it the same that you would a brisket. So like a pencil thickness, ideally, because the burning question is it better than brisket or is it as good as brisket? Well, let's have a look. So the texture's quite similar. If anything, the grains are a bit tighter than brisket, because briskets can get quite grainy. How about the pull test? Pulls apart nicely. Let's have a taste. Honestly, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. That gelatinous stuff in the middle really makes it super lovely and moist. I quite like the tighter fibers as well, as opposed to brisket, because sometimes it can get stringy. Is it better than brisket? Oof. Well, that's debatable, but so far, for me, this almost tops it. Smoked oyster blade that takes half the amount of time as brisket, is cheaper, and in my opinion, eats just as well. Don't forget to make those delicious sides that we also made today. Help cut through all that fatty, gelatinous deliciousness, and we'll see you next week for another recipe. Peace.